the reality that ADHD is just how our brains are and it will always be how we are. And I don't know about you, but I'm 50. I have a hard time imagining society will suddenly adapt to ADHDers, especially because it's more of a quote unquote invisible disability or invisible challenge in my lifetime. So I am of the belief that there's a good chance that things aren't going to change a whole lot in society. I mean, we're seeing some things shift, so that might not be entirely true. But at least during my working years on the planet, I suspect that this is the situation. And for now, the reality is the situation that we're in is that we live in a neurotypical society. We work in a neurotypical society, and none of that was designed for our ADHD brains. So let's talk about what to do about it. Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about a tough topic and what to do about it. And it's the fact that ADHD can't be fixed. It will always be a struggle, at least some of the time. And that can be tough to swallow. A lot of times in our quick fix society, we just want things to be better and we want them to be better fast. And the reality is we have a brain difference and we live in a society that doesn't accommodate for that. We live in a society where there aren't even a ton of accommodations always for people in wheelchairs who physically can't get into places, who have a visible disability. And a lot of times with these invisible challenges like ADHD, the accommodations in society just aren't there. And instead, the message is we just need to try harder, have more discipline, or I don't know what else people say, but all kinds of stuff, right? Like just do it. And I didn't mean to quote Nike, but hey, I just realized that does it too, right? And so I want to really normalize that living with ADHD can be hard. I'm someone who a lot of people are like, yeah, you got your shit together, Jen. And you know what? In a lot of ways, I do. I really do. And there are times when I still struggle with ADHD. There are times when my time blindness makes me mess up my time and be like 30 minutes late. I mean, obviously I call when I realize that, but there are times, when I cannot get myself to fold my laundry because it's painful. There are times when I cannot get myself to write the email that I need to write because it's painful. And or just I can't do it. And I want to talk about this because you can have all the strategies in the world and still struggle. So I really want to validate that experience. It doesn't mean that we have to struggle constantly every day, all day, forever. If that's the case, then probably you could benefit from some additional skills, tools, strategies, support, inner work, things like that. And there will be times when we struggle where things are hard. And like I said, some of that is because we live in this neurotypical society. But there are amazingly beautiful things that people with ADHD do and can do that sometimes I don't know if others can do it because of how our brains are wired. We're more creative. We're more spontaneous. We're able to be risk takers. There's so many things. And a lot of times, those gifts are also the flip side of some of the challenges, like our impulsivity or time blindness or whatever else you have. And so, appreciating those strengths can be particularly hard, especially if we have loved ones who aren't in the place of appreciating the strength of our ADHD and instead are frustrated with the challenge, perhaps the challenge that's the flip side of something they benefit from. So as hard as ADHD can be, I think it's important to remember that there are amazing things that only we can do and appreciate those things in the world, right? We get like the Emma Watsons of the world, right? Because of ADHD, and it's lovely, even though it can often be a struggle. So I just want to name, you can have all the tools and strategies in the world and still struggle with ADHD because you probably sometimes still struggle to use them. And some of this comes from underlying inner, often invisible obstacles that we'll talk about later. But some of this, as I said before, comes from living in this neurotypical society because at times, no matter how you set yourself up to be able to function and do things, no matter how you set up your business and your lives, there's still going to be times when you have to do things the neurotypical way, or at least support yourself enough to be able to function with neurotypical people. There's just no way around it. And I don't know about you, but I find that incredibly draining. It doesn't mean I don't like neurotypical people. It doesn't mean that it's certainly not about creating an otherizing situation, right? Like, that's not the way to healing and growth. And at the same time, it's about recognizing that sometimes we're going to have to show up in ways that masks our symptoms. I mean, maybe you don't at all, but I got to believe that the world would be very hard to navigate without ever masking any of your ADHD, right? Like a conversation I'm thinking with some of the neurotypical people I know who are great people, colleagues, people who are part of communities I'm in. And to be able to have a conversation with them, I can't do conversation the ADHD way. I can't do the circular conversation that we do where we quote unquote interrupt each other because we are validating that we get it with our own story. And you could do that with neurotypical people, but they probably won't like you very much, which is fine. They don't have to like you. But if there's an interaction that you want to have with them, if you're interrupting all the time or blurting out or sharing your experience when they're trying to share something important to them, they view that as rude and like we don't care. And don't get me wrong, I understand the challenge of like, well, why do we have to adapt and not them? I get it. Someday I would love for it to be true that people just know we're ADHD and that's how we are and know not to take it personally. But that's not the reality. And sometimes we can change that reality by naming our stuff. But again, it has to be in safe enough spaces. I'm not going to talk to someone at the grocery store who is neurotypical in a way that is interrupting them because I'm not going to be like, oh, sorry, I interrupt with ADHD. Like, I'm just not going to do that. But there may be times when we can. And there may be times where we need to dial down some of the challenges we face. And again, I'm not saying this is fair, but it can be the reality if we have circles that we need to function in without being ostracized because of how our ADHD has us showing up. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is it's about that balance. But because of that, because there are times when we may choose to show up in a way that looks a little more neurotypical or at least dial down some of our ADHD, that is draining and we can feel exhausted. So the thing is when we do that, we want to be very intentional about when we choose it. And we'll talk more about setting up our environment so that maybe we're having to choose it less. But for now, I just want to say that's exhausting. It's exhausting. And I just don't think it's possible or even really a good idea to only ever talk to fellow ADHDers. I mean, like, we're awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's just that other types of brains have interesting things to offer too and are good people too. And so even if we're not in communities where there are neurotypical people that we need to interact with, we still may want to choose to know neurotypical people because there's benefit in doing that. They might help us learn and grow. Of course, to be clear, people who are, are understanding and compassionate about our situation, especially if they're closer to us. But okay, I'm going on and on. I'm going to stop myself, rein it back in. See, sometimes even though I got my stuff together, ADHD can just take me off the rails. So I want to just say that functioning in the neurotypical society can be draining. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, and that we want to be selective about it. And in some ways, this goes along with something I saw one of my teachers post on Facebook or Instagram. He posted on Instagram. And it was that one of the first things he recommends hiring for once you have the ability to for your business is a house cleaner and a personal assistant. Now, he doesn't say he has ADHD. I've never heard him say that. But boy, is that ADHD advice. And comes up for a lot of us immediately is, how in the heck am I supposed to afford that? It's like, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to have a housekeeper. And at the same time, we may or may not have the funding for that. And this is a tricky topic because it can get into our limiting beliefs around money, and it can get into class issues and with socioeconomic status, things like that. And I will say, I have yet to hire a house cleaner, but boy, do I see how that would help me, because my space would be clear and clean, and it would help me be able to think more clearly and focus. It's just that that money needs to be spent elsewhere right now, and you might experience the same thing. And if you can afford it, I would actually say that things like a house cleaner is not a luxury for people with ADHD. I don't know about you, maybe cleaning is like a special interest of yours, so you got no problem with it. But my goodness, it is like kind of painful for me, like emotionally painful for me to get myself to clean. And I do it, but I drag my feet every time. I mean, and let's not even get started on folding laundry, right? So I just want to name that, like, one of the ways that we can support ourselves in this neurotypical world that requires us to have a home that is clean and functional, but also that helps us focus, right? Is to hire a house cleaner or to hire a personal assistant to help us keep track of everything. That would be amazing. Although I don't know if I'd like it. I kind of wonky about my schedule and my task list because I have my systems in place now and have for like, I don't know, 35 years. So since I was a young child. And so I don't know if that'd be something I'd feel really good about relinquishing control of. But boy, I know some people who having a personal assistant would just be the best thing ever. So those things, again, may not be luxuries for those of us with ADHD. They may be necessities to help us be in this neurotypical world, to function and live inside of it. Another piece of this, getting ourselves a personal assistant or hiring a house cleaner, for sure the money piece is the one that I hear the most often. But there's also underlying limiting beliefs that can come up for people, like, who am I to have that? Or that's just for rich people, and rich people are assholes or whatever, like whatever limiting beliefs you have, or I'm not worthy or deserving of that. Even the inner expectation of I should just be able to do that myself. Those limiting beliefs can lead to us adding help, supports like a house cleaner into our lives to help us be able to navigate this neurotypical world with less struggle, with less pain. And beneath all of these limiting beliefs is often shame. Shame that we just can't do it. Shame that, I don't know about you, but if you saw my bathroom floor right now, you'd see a lot of Jen hair and a lot of cat hair. And then something I spilled a couple months ago that I haven't cleaned up. So it's got like it's just like the size of a dime. It's probably like hair product that's got some like lint, like, I don't know, dust or lint on it now, right? It's gross, right? And I mean, if we're honest, I suspect a lot of us are that way unless we have help and support getting our house clean. And so there's, used to be a part of me that was like, I should be able to do this. And now I'm just like in a place of, I just don't. Because, and it's not even that I can't. I mean, I can, not as quickly as I'd like, certainly not as quickly as the rest of society would think is important if they came to my house. I'm glad my mom isn't hearing this. She's deceased, so actually she probably is hearing this. But I wouldn't want her to be like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta teach Jen how to clean," because it's not even about that, right? It's so much more is about the struggle of getting ourselves to do it and having the bandwidth for it. And a lot of us feel shame about that, and we feel a lot of shame about it. And that shame can oftentimes keep us from reaching out for the supports we need. So I want to, with that in mind, move into what we do about this. Because this is hard, heavy stuff. The reality that ADHD is just how our brains are and it will always be how we are. And I don't know about you, but I'm 50. I have a hard time imagining society will suddenly adapt to ADHDers, especially because it's more of a quote unquote invisible disability or invisible challenge in my lifetime. I am of the belief that there's a good chance that things aren't going to change a whole lot in society. I mean, we're seeing some things shift, so that might not be entirely true. But at least during my working years on the planet, I suspect that this is the situation. And for now, the reality is the situation that we're in is that we live in a neurotypical society. We work in a neurotypical society, and none of that was designed for our ADHD brains. So let's talk about what to do about it. There's actually 3 things that are essential to being able to function in the world, have a business, live, and even enjoy life with ADHD. And one, you probably know it, is ADHD specific tools and strategies. And a lot of times it can be honing in on which tools and strategies we need. Because what I notice in most ADHD women I talk with, they've got a plethora of strategies. I've got a plethora of strategies, but it's often about knowing when to apply the right strategy and what strategies to focus on. Because it can be really, really hard to do all these new things at once. And so perhaps when we're adding a strategy, we pick one, right? A strategy, and we add that in little bits slowly over time. And then maybe we add another one. And that's how we get to a place of I don't want to say improved functioning. That sounds like a judgment where we're able to do the things we need to do and able to do the things we want to do, both for our business and in our life. So having these ADHD specific tools and strategies is essential. But as I said before, with ADHD, we can have all the tools and strategies in the world, but we may never use them. And so part of helping us use them and part of helping us need less of them is step 2. Well, and really this is like a step before that. I'm going in reverse order here, is to set your life and your business up the ADHD way as much as possible. And I get that, like, if you still have a full-time job while you're building your business, there may be ways like you can do that, and it might be not as possible. But there are things you can do to try and set your life up as much as possible to be the ADHD way, to be the way your unique ADHD brain works. I was watching a YouTube video of someone who was talking about the challenge of putting laundry away. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why it's so hard. I never got this before. But what she was saying is putting laundry away is a multi-step process because, first of all, you have to get the laundry out of the dryer. And then you have like piles and piles of laundry on your bed or in a laundry basket. And you have to get it. And then you have to sort it. And you might sort it all at once, or you might sort it as you fold it. But either way, you're sorting and folding. And those are 2 steps. And then you have to put it away and put it away in the right place with all these different things that don't go in the same places. Like there's some things that go hung up. There's some things that go in this drawer, some things that go in that drawer. I've got socks under my bed in a bin. So, like they go in there. And so putting away laundry is a multi-step process. And so what she suggested, and this is really an example of setting your life up the ADHD way, is to actually have, I think she had 3 or 4 laundry bins. And one was for shirts. One was for sweaters, right? So the first one is non-sweater shirts. One was for sweaters. One was for pants or bottoms. And then the other one was socks and underwear. right? I suppose you have to have a towels one, although that goes with socks, underwear for me. I don't know if that's true for others, but and I'm not saying you have to have 4 laundry bins, but what she would do is she would just wash one load would be just one of those bins. So an entire load would have just shirts. So then it's easier to put away because you're just putting away shirts. And then you do that with pants. And for you, you may have different categories than she had, but if you can separate it out that way, that makes laundry less of a multi-step process, and it makes it easier to put your laundry away. Or maybe you do it by person. I don't know. If you do laundry for your entire family, which I highly recommend teaching your kids to do laundry as soon as you can, but maybe you do laundry for the whole family and maybe you do it by person. So at least it's separated by room and you're not having to do all the laundry for the entire family in the same bin. That sounds exhausting and like a huge task, like super daunting. So you get the idea. And my point of sharing this strategy, which I thought was brilliant, I was like, nice job, ADHD lady. This is one of the benefits of it, right? We're creative. The thing is what she is doing is setting her life up to live the ADHD way. And so when we just do things that work for our brain and make it easier for us to do what we need to do, we are living and working the ADHD way. I recently started using AccuFlow, which is a planning kind of software thing. It includes your tasks and your calendar and whatever. And it comes with these reminders. It's almost like a personal assistant. Really. And I started using it. And it has been game changing because it is helping me do scheduling the ADHD way. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want that. I am an affiliate for them, but that's not why I brought this up. This just came into my mind as I was talking. But that helps me set things up the ADHD way. And there's lots of ways we can do this for our business and lots of ways that we can do that in our life. And I talk about those in my program Ascend. But for now, what you can do is start to look at like the tasks that are hard and be like, why is this so hard? And try to use your creativity to find a more effective way to do it for yourself. So, alongside of these other two steps is the need for self-compassion, self-love, which is beyond just mere acceptance of our ADHD, though acceptance is a piece, and also radical acceptance, right? And these are tricky because a lot of times we struggle to love and accept ourselves. We struggle to have compassion for ourselves. We struggle to give ourselves, I don't want to say the benefit of the doubt, but assume best intent for ourselves. Sometimes we can do that for others, but we tend to struggle to do it for ourselves. And what I notice in the women I work with is when they are able to radically accept their ADHD, I'll talk about what that is in a moment, when they are able to have compassion for themselves and even love themselves, even start to love themselves more than they do, those other two steps become easier. And the challenge is, as I say, self-love and self-compassion, there's probably something inside of you going, yeah, right. And feeling like, yeah, no, And there's reasons for that. There's reasons that you feel maybe incapable or unlovable, or maybe not fully unlovable, but like it's hard to love yourself. Or maybe it's hard to believe you deserve self-compassion. And that's because there are parts inside of you that learned from your past experiences that you weren't good enough. And that wasn't true. But that was the message you got from society. The messages you got from society may have been things like you're not good enough, you're not capable, you need to try harder, you're not doing it right, over and over and over again. And eventually, we internalize those beliefs, and something inside of us starts to not want to or not be able to trust that it's safe to have compassion and love for ourselves, to assume positive intent for ourselves. And if that sounds interesting to you, we're going to work on some of this in my upcoming event. But before I share about that, I want to talk about radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is this idea that we accept the reality of a situation, even if we don't like it. So I'm not saying you have to be like, yeah, I have ADHD. It's fantastic all the time. Like, that's not what radical acceptance is. Radical acceptance is saying, yeah, I've got ADHD. And sometimes it's great. There are things I can do, creativity I have, other amazing gifts of my ADHD, my independence, my ability to build a business. A lot of that and have vision, a lot of that comes from ADHD and it's great. And there's times when it's a real struggle, and that's the reality. And I accept that that's the truth. That is the reality. And so radical acceptance is not arguing with the truth or reality of a situation, because that's just a waste of energy and time. Instead, it's saying that this is true. This is hard sometimes and beneficial sometimes, but it's not my first choice all the time. And when we accept that, then we can put our energy into, what do I do now? What do I do now? And so this is a huge piece of the self-acceptance and self-love, because before we can, I don't know, maybe not before, but part of loving ourselves is going to be embracing our ADHD. And if you have parts inside of you going, yeah, right, Jen, or that's bullshit, or I would encourage you to really notice what's coming up in your body. As I say that, what do you notice? And what leads you to feel or believe that way? Because chances are it's stuff from the past, these inner obstacles that need to be addressed and resolved. And if you're interested in doing some of this work and learning how to overcome these invisible ADHD obstacles, then you're invited to my 3-part live event that starts tomorrow, August 1st, 2024. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes to get registered. And I've done this exact event 2 times before. And every time people are like, wow, there was so much value. I got so much out of this. And so I really encourage you to register and show up, because here's the thing. I'm going to do show up bonuses if you attend the entire length of one of those parts. Then at the end, you'll get one of the bonuses. So there's bonuses there. There's bonuses for joining the Facebook group. And I'm rolling out a special new VIP experience as part of this launch that you get to do to increase the likelihood that you'll do the work and really enhance your learning. So check it out. Register today using the link in the show notes. And if you can't make it live, it will be recorded. But here's the thing. I hesitate to say that, and that's kind of why I stumbled, is I hesitate to say it will be recorded because here's the thing. It'll probably just be one of those things you sign up for and then don't do. So try and make it live, put it in your calendar, and plan to see me there. Plus, you're going to get some pretty amazing bonuses to show up the entire time, which is really what you want to do anyway, right? So check out the link in the show notes, get registered today, and I will see you tomorrow. If you're not following the Self-Love Woman Way podcast yet, please follow and share. All right, y'all, take care.